So obviously we're in a dark building, so I brought along some light sources, so don't freak out about how complicated it all looks. You wouldn't need any of this stuff if you're in the bush. But if you are in the bush and things are a bit cloudy, there's all sorts of LED stuff nowadays, okay, that are quite powerful. So you can use that. I mean, you can do flash, preferably with a filter on it, so that it diffuses it. But you know, the LED, because it's over an extended distance, you're not getting that single point focus, and you're not getting all the speckles in your photos. So that's just one. This one, you can adjust the intensity. You can just use basic stuff like one of those. But yeah, so just a bit of LED light can really make a difference when you're in the bush and it's a bit cloudy or it's a bit overcast and you just can't get the illumination. So you've got to keep touching this, otherwise it goes to sleep. Right, so the big benefit of being able to connect the camera, that's why I'm not using the projector on my laptop when I'm trying to explain stuff, and between the camera and actually demonstrate focus. So this is just autofocus at the moment. So mirrorless cameras have eye detect. It's a flower, but it still does a pretty good job of getting to the centre of the flower. So I either use the toggle points, which you can move around, or the eye detect. But if it won't go to where you want, then just go back to the leads. But that's only one way. So in the run sheet, I've mentioned that whether you have a phone, a digital SLR with a removable macro lens. I actually do a lot of my photography with my bird lens. So it's a 100 to 500mm lens. It used to be a real pain. I'd run two cameras, one for the flowers and one for the birds, because as sure as you sat down looked at a bird, you know, you'd see this gorgeous flower on the ground. So with this one, it's got a couple of other advantages. So when you're at Wilders Hill and you see the people off in the bush where they're not supposed to be, you can actually get pretty good photos right from the footpath because it's a 500mm lens. This camera is 45 megapixel, so even if the donkey orchids are a fair way in at Wilders Hill, for example, I can still get a decent photo. If you're using a camera, then a tripod plus a cable release obviously takes out all the shake. The landscape photographers, they actually put a couple of bricks or a bag of sand and they stamp their tripods in to make sure that they're really stable. So it's no good using a tripod that's on rocky ground, sandy ground, and it's not properly secured. But then the cable release just takes out any shake when you're pressing the button. Now, the other thing I want to demonstrate is if we, and then the other one is you can use your phone. So I can take a photo with my phone and then just use AirDrop to put it on my laptop and bring it up on the screen, so you can see that, you know, whatever you've got in your pocket is better than you're missing out. So that's in autofocus at the moment. So if I switch to manual focus, and this lens has some, macro lens has some settings. You can either have it on full, or you can say, look, I want it to go really close. Now that I'm in manual focus, notice the lines on the screen. So the digital SLR didn't have that. That's just an advantage of the mirrorless cameras. It's like the old days where you had two halves and you lined them up until the thing on your old single lens reflex. So it's pretty hard not to get in focus according to where it thinks the focus should be. However, if again, so while we're there, you can see my aperture down the bottom. So if I go to f2.8, most of your macros will go down to f2.8. You can see that even when I've got the center in focus, these are all soft. So one of the things we need to understand tonight is that your depth of field is directly related to your aperture, so that F number, so on the back of my camera, Right, and you also notice, that's why live to, because I've gone to such a small opening, greater depth of field, I need to crank up the light or put the light closer. So if you do go to f16, for example, put the whole flower in focus, then you need to remember that you're either going to need to change your ISO. I'm on auto ISO at the moment, but you can do it manually if you like. So that's just something else. And then while you're doing that, because we're on manual, you can choose just where about it. Okay, now it gets even better than that, because if you go to zoom, and this is one of the beauties of using live view. You can, if you want that centered bit, you can even see there's bugs in there.
Oh, yes.
Bonus point. This has been in the garden. I only just, I'll show you. I put it in the garden a week ago, and because it's got roots there, I've actually put it on a spacer so that I don't damage the roots, so that at the end of the evening I can put it back in the garden, minus the pot. But so, live view is a really helpful one, and you can even go in 10 times. So when you're talking about macro, you can see the shape just. So if you really want to do high scale macro with real tiny insects, then that live view, assuming it's not a blue-banded bee, which is almost impossible to sit still, then you can manually focus. So manual focus will only work though when it's not blowing 25 knots in the wind. You haven't got a stem that's going backwards and forwards. So the first thing on the run sheet is the weather. Before you go out, if it's howling winds, it's going to be really hard to get good wildflower photos, unless maybe you're going for an artistic swaying blue, which can be quite artistic. So any questions so far, please?
What's the advantage of a macro lens if you regularly use your telephoto lens?
The macro can normally get up closer, and the magnification is greater. So macros are funny though. You can have a 50mm macro, a 100mm macro, and a 180mm macro, and you think, well, 180mm macro will be more powerful. It doesn't work that way. So unlike ordinary lenses, a 100mm lens, a 500mm lens is more powerful, more magnification. Macro lenses are especially designed to get close, and I think the 60mm macro is actually able to enlarge more than the 180mm. The big difference is how close you can get to the flower. So the 180mm macro, you can get further away and still get a decent magnification. The 50mm one or 60mm one, you need to be very close to the flower. One of the complications when you get really close is there's less light coming through. You'll notice that I've got a lens hood on. So I always use lens hoods. Two reasons. One, I never have a lens cap on, because there's nothing worse than seeing something gorgeous. I was with bees this morning catching a hornet. If I've got my lens cap on, I could miss the photo. So the lens hoods, if you're on a boat, they stop the spray. If you're in the wind, they can stop the dust. So lens hoods, I see so many people, they've got the lens hood on, but it's on back to front, you know, in the tuck-up position. So I don't use lens caps on either of my cameras when I'm out in the field, and the lens hoods are really helpful in that regard. So if I wanted to take a photo, if you do have access to projectors, the cameras have different size HDMI plugs. So this one is a micro HDMI. Your ordinary sized HDMI, we call that full sized, and there's a medium sized, and then there's a tiny one. So you need a special lead. You can get them from JB Hi-Fi, Officeworks, and stuff like that. November now, it's on the front. I'm sure this camera's got one. And you need to make sure you match the pins, so it's got 3 pins to it at the bottom. So. Right, so any choices on what aperture we're going to go for? Alright, so 2.8 came first, so we'll go for 2.8. Straight away you can notice that the light has increased. So there's a, so I'll get it in focus first. And so I'm going to have it a little bit soft on the centre, so I've still got some petals because it's at 2.8. If it's still too bright, I can increase the shutter speed. So you watch what happens. As you increase the shutter speed, less time for the light to get in. So, but you'll notice that the ISO is going up. So I'm currently on. Right, so we're going to go into the ISO and change that from auto to 100 is the ideal. So if you're out there in the daylight, lots of sunshine, 100 ISO has the least noise in your photos. So if you've got plenty of light, ISO 100 is easy. The reason why I use auto ISO is because with modern cameras, their resolution and their amount of noise is much improved over the older cameras, and so you can get away with photos. I can still use some of my photos with 6400 ISO. So I can just use whatever speed is necessary, but we'll go back to having a look at the view. Right, so you can see that at ISO 100, it's dark. Now, if I go and up the ISO, so if you want to shoot full manual, controlling both the aperture, so I'm currently in full manual, so I'm adjusting the speed, I'm adjusting the aperture. So this one's completely stationary, so I don't need that 200th of a second. So it's on a tripod, I should be able to do that. But look, at ISO 1600, too much light. So, sorry, right. Where was I? So, get the right button in a minute. ISO, top one. Right, so I need to bring the ISO down. So you can see any one of those 3 things can be used to control how much light you're putting in on the photo. So let's say we're happy with that. So it's taken a photo, so we can play back the photo. So this is actually now on my memory card. So I can take the memory card out, put it in the laptop, but while it's on your camera, you can zoom in and you can then make a decision. So the beauty about the screen on the back of your camera, and with the modern mirrorless ones, you can actually look through the viewfinder and actually see it in even more detail. Any more questions? All right, so we'll turn. Oh, sorry. So while I've got this light, just watch your eyes for a moment.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yep.
When you're dealing with ISO versus shutter speed, what's more, like, is there one that's more important than the other, or how?
Well, with flowers, the shutter speed is probably the most important up front, so that there's no motion blur of the flower moving. And so while we're talking about that, you might notice that there's some curly, fuzzy pipe cleaners on my tripod. So one of the really important things is you never, ever tie stuff around your plants, especially orchids, little delicate snail orchids or something like that. I saw some students from a university doing some research on snail orchids in Kenhurst Park, and they put surveyor tape around the snail orchid stem. Big no-no. What you can do is you can make that, you can tie that onto a stick or whatever, and then you have that around the plant so that there is no pressure on the plant. It's just stopping it shaking. So you'll notice on the sheet there, apart from the weather, when you get near a flower, you really need to check that while you're photographing this one, you're not squashing this one. The Orchid Society needs to be particularly concerned about that one because of what's going on under the ground near the orchids that you're actually looking at. Yeah, you don't want your wildflower interest to be causing more damage than the trail bikes or the kids cutting through from school, etc. So, very important. Now, there's a whole range of strategies you can use to stabilise things. So, you can use, just a branch that's laying around in the ground, it's got a fork in it, and you can just prop it up, like the fork, like that. It just takes the shake out, but you need to make sure that any props that you use are outside of your photo range. There's nothing worse than a great big stick in the bottom part of your photo. But pipe cleaners are really handy, and so that's why I always have those on my tripod, so that if I'm out there with a tripod. But with the modern mirrorless cameras, because of the much better noise performance at higher ISOs, I can usually get away with that and just go to a higher speed, even if there's a bit of a breeze blowing. So at 1,000th of a second, you need a pretty stiff breeze, because you'll notice when you're in the breeze, the flower's going like this, and then there'll be a momentary pause, quick, okay, and then it'll go like that, and you just watch until it gets to just a slight lull, and click.
Is shooting in reverse useful in that regard?
Yep, okay, so multiple angles of that question. So, particularly with bird photography, when you're doing high-speed action, even more high-speed, a burst will have slightly different focus. So same with the flower, if there was a bit of a wind, it might be better in one of the photos. So if it's a special photo, not only should you take a burst of photos, but you should also, so if this was like a butterfly orchid, I would take one at f2.8. I'd take one at f4, I'd take one at f5.6, f8, f11, f13, because it's not until you look at it, you go, oh, f2.8, can't see enough of it. Oh, f8, f16, oh, I can see all the weeds in the background. So there's that sweet spot where it really looks nice. And so that's called focus bracketing, aperture bracketing, yeah, so aperture bracketing. And then the other thing you can do is you can do exposure bracketing. I'll see if I can demonstrate. Oh, and so this light panel not only can do intensity, it can do colour temperature. So you can do like a cloudy, warm day, or you can do the bright daylight day, and you can also turn the intensity up and down. So I'll see if I can remember how to do this. Right, so I need to get out of the live view for a moment. Right, so one of these dials, so this is your exposure compensation. So you can adjust more exposure or less exposure. So I used to find on my digital SLRs, this macro lens needed -2/3 to have the correct exposure. Because your macro lens is up closer, it wasn't giving me, 0 wasn't working. Okay, I did exposure bracketing.
So remind us what minus means, less or more light?
Yeah, so if you've got a white swan, you need to go down, less light. If you've got a black cockatoo, you need to go up to get a little bit more light. To be honest, I've forgotten how to. So one of the buttons normally, when you're in that field, will. It will normally come up with multiple shots, so you can take one, it'll come up, instead of a single point, it'll spread the points and you can do 3 shots at once, one at say minus a third, one at 0, one at plus third. I'll try and remember how to do that before the end of the session. But so that's, when you're in there, you're setting that for multiple examples, you can actually do that way you can work out where the best exposure is for your lens under normal conditions. So I've set this camera so that I can, while I'm still on, actually what I'll do. So on my camera I've set custom settings. So if I forget what I'm doing, I can just go back to custom and then it's all back to normal, it's on auto ISO again. I'd probably reprogram one of the buttons to turn that one off. So I don't know whether there's any, but I could probably do it with the other lens. All right, so any more questions before we go on to the next bit? Right, yeah?
Out in the field, you're saying you don't really use LED, or do you use LED or flash in the field?
No, because it's much easier just to have a camera. Yeah. So if it's a really special plant, yes, then you might see me by the side of the highway with an umbrella and a tripod and all the gear. But with the modern cameras, I hardly ever do that anymore.
And do you still always use the tripod even with those high shutter speeds, or sometimes?
No, okay, with the modern mirrorless cameras, I can take photos at 12,800 ISO, and then using things like topaz denoise, a neat image, Photoshop, Lightroom, they all have noise removal tools. You can really, and the other thing is with a 45 megapixel camera, if you take 8,000 pixels and squish it down just for Facebook to 800 pixels, nobody can see the noise. It's just so much more convenient with the modern cameras, even with your phone. You know, just pull it out and everybody knows to use touch on your phone when you're focusing. I'm hoping.
Doesn't always work.
Yeah, so when you are, and I can't demonstrate this live on the screen because it doesn't have a projector plug, but when you're doing the phone, when you go into photo, if you touch where you want it to focus, it normally brings up a little box. So with flowers, I normally find that I need to zoom in a little bit first. If you zoom in too much, it normally won't work. So there's a happy distance, and so if, right, and then obviously you need to stand still. So you can do wireless stuff from your cycle for a minute. Right, so if I want to send that photo to my camera on my phone, I'm saying airdrop. And I can send it to Mary, I can send it to somebody called iPhone, I can send it to Keith's MacBook Pro. So it is handy if you put your name on your phone so that when you're trying to send stuff to your mate, you know whose phone you're sending it to. So you can see here, accept, save for downloads. I'll drop it in Elements because I'm too cheap to pay for monthly credit cards on Photoshop.
Ridiculous.
So there you can see that straight off the phone. You know, I was shaking a little bit. You can see that the back photo is not as in focus as the front photo. But yeah, I can go back and take another photo. You can zoom in.
A little spice
Oh, little white spider still. I hadn't realised I'd bought so much but yeah, you'll notice on the list that that's one of the things is when you're down up close with the photos, you know, there's nothing better than a spider under the leaf with a spider or crawling around it. Okay, so if you're there gentle and spend long enough, you can get some really interesting you know, extra characters. It's all part of the ecosystem. As somebody mentioned at the beginning, with COVID, but just getting out in nature, I think it's good for your soul. You know, just spending time in nature. So you only get out of that for the moment, and I've got a couple of other things to run through. I forgot to put it on the sheet, but if you do need, I'm happy to take phone calls or emails. And unlike some people who are fairly commercial, I'm retired, I don't charge anything. So if anybody's got a question, I try to be unbiased. Doesn't matter whether you're using Nikon, Sony, Olympus, Canon, whatever. I try to be helpful. So yeah, if you have got any queries, so that's out at the Air Bird Observatory. We get quite a few pink cockatoos. They used to be called another name, but the person involved committed some indigenous atrocities, so it's no longer that cockatoo, it's now a pink cockatoo.
Oh, is that why?
Yeah, so you may have noticed that happening.
Right.
Yeah, so BirdLife has switched over. And yeah, it really does help. Right, so it was on the run sheet. Can somebody identify the error?
The background is noisy.
Well, the background has blooming sticks in it.
Yeah.
So one of the techniques that I do is when I'm focusing on the flower, after focusing on the flower, I then focus on the background. And you wouldn't believe a single blade of grass, especially dead grass, it'll kill all of your best attempts. So always look at the background. So we had a camera competition, we had a judge at our camera club the other night, and that was one of the things. I could have had this gorgeous orchid flower, but the background let it down, let's just say. So really important. Now, conservation hat on. You can't, there was one bird photographer, he said, well, he's in a national park, he says, well, just go and cut a flower and put it there behind the bird and go, whoa. So he's saying, if you do move the twigs or whatever, and they're providing protection for the verticordia, then put it back when you're finished. So like the old, who was it that put it all back? Harry Butler, yeah, put it back, squash the rock down on the runners, but yeah. But yeah, can't emphasise enough about checking the background. And so on the run sheet, I've also said that my grandmother taught me how to arrange flowers. You have to arrange yourself with wildflowers. You can't arrange the flower. You just go around and you go, this angle, yeah, those two line up nice, okay, and then there's that one in the background. So it's really important that you spend time, and so like I've been out quite a bit with Dave Bettini. If you get Landscape magazine or calendars, you'll notice he's got some amazing photos, but he will spend half an hour just on the one plant to find the optimum view. And there may not be one optimum view, there may be a nice close, hearty, feely one, or then you might want to go for, on the bottom of the sheet I've mentioned the science angle. You need to know what the habitat's like. So assuming there's no sticks there, you might do a more distant shot so you can see the type of leaf. It's really useful when you're trying to do the species ID. So the hardest part about wildflower photography for me is the bloody identification. I can take a photo in 5 minutes. It might take me 5 days or 5 months to actually finally get the
Just buy my books, Keith.
I have all of Eddie's books. In fact, I had 3 sets of Eddie's books. I was able to give a couple of the sets away to friends. And I've got all the colour-coded ones, which are a great idea. The Perth surrounds. I've got the orchid books. I've got an aeromophila book. I've got a verticordia book. I've got dragonfly books. I've got spider books. I've got and the internet. Okay, and so fortunately, I can't highly recommend Florabase. If you can actually get to the right genus, okay, then Florabase is really helpful, but not if it's Grevillea and there's 16 pages or 20 entries. But it is really helpful, particularly when you're getting down to the distribution maps, and you go, well, I thought it was that Grevillea, but then you go, well, it's only found out in the stony desert, so it's probably not that one. You can work your way through the 126 alphabetical entries for Grevillea or Hakea or some of the other ones. All right, I'm just going to have a quick look to see if there's anything major that I've left off so far. Oh, forgot to mention the lens clean. So Eddie and myself were out at Kenhurst Park. It's all